Welcome to the Binge Eating to Food Freedom podcast for driven hearts and minds. If you pour your best self into everything you do, and yet food takes up so much energy that it pulls you away from what matters most, you're in the right place. I'm Katie Papo, and I'm here to help you create a healthy relationship with food that supports you to live your highest and best life. And for an extra edge, become a food freedom insider. Each week, I'll give you free, practical wisdom you can actually use in your daily life and more. Just head to katiepapo.com/resources or check the show notes. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode. Today's episode is all about how to actually train yourself to crave healthy foods most of the time and how to crave the junk a whole lot less. And just before we start, I did want to briefly announce that for the first time since last year, there are now open spaces for the Food Freedom Intensive, and you can now register, and we're starting soon. This is the most comprehensive program that I offer. It's a way to work with me directly to transform your relationship with food, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the episode, what that looks like. So stick around if you want to learn more. So let's get into today's topic. So like you, I always cared about my health a lot. And I did have body image issues. I was always trying to lose weight, but I also cared about my health for deeper reasons than that. I wanted to have energy, to feel confident. I wanted to feel good as I got older. I wanted to be the highest and best version of myself. But even with those deep motivations and desires, I was still binge eating every night. And it wasn't like I didn't like the taste of healthy food, but I was still binging on the junk. So why was it that even though I valued my health so much and I even liked healthy foods, I still couldn't stop eating those darn cookies? And my clients have felt the same. So what I'll teach you today is a very unique process because it doesn't come from a place of force or setting food rules. Because if you think about it, the only reason we set food rules and we go on diets and all these structured food plans is because we don't trust ourselves if we didn't. We'd eat too many unhealthy foods, or we just binge all the time, or not have enough self-control. But if we're honest, is that working? Are we really sticking to that? Obviously not, or we wouldn't be here. We always fall off the wagon eventually. So we can see already food rules just aren't a sustainable solution. And they keep us mentally obsessed with food all the time. It's like our brains just become filled with mental chatter and food noise, which is a torture in itself. So the reason why this unique process that I'm going to take you through today is so special is because it takes all of that noise out of the equation. You can actually train yourself to crave healthy food and to feel naturally more repelled from the unhealthy stuff. And you don't have to think about food 24/7 in order to do that. Your mind actually, as a side effect, becomes more free to focus on what you really care about. And this process has been very reliably giving myself and my clients amazing results for the last decade, and I'm excited to share it with you today. But before we go further, last week's episode is going to help you understand today's episode better. So I do want to strongly recommend, just make a mental note for yourself to listen to last week's episode also. So let's get into it. So to start, let's first make sure that you understand why you're choosing the unhealthy foods in the first place. So most of us who struggle to eat healthy consistently, we blame willpower and our self-control. 99% of the people I talk to say willpower is their main problem. And you're right that willpower is a problem, but it's not a problem in the way that you think. There are a couple core reasons we'll talk about today why you're craving the unhealthy stuff. And the first reason does have to do with willpower, but it's not because you don't have enough of it. It's because you're using it in the wrong way. So think about it. If you need to be super disciplined in some other area of your life, like you're working hard for a promotion or studying for something in school or starting a business or managing your family's crazy schedule or saving money for something that really matters, you can do all of that. You have the willpower and the discipline there, no problem. So it's really just with food that willpower seems to be the issue. Why is that? You don't have a willpower problem. You have a strategy problem. You using willpower to control your eating is triggering what I call the restriction effect. And this is the first core reason that you're craving all this unhealthy stuff. So look at your history. You've tried these diets, these meal plans, food rules, where certain foods become forbidden. And even if you do want to forbid yourself of these foods for your health, part of you still feels deprived. And this creates the forbidden fruit effect, the restriction effect around these foods. Your brain starts to obsess about them because you can't have them. And this is the opposite of what most of us think will happen, right? We think, oh, if I just follow this diet or I tell myself no sugar this week, then that'll mean it's out of my mind. It means I just won't want the sugar because I won't be thinking about it. I know I can't have it. And maybe that worked at some point, maybe the first diet or two when our motivation was sky high. We still had the novelty of all this. At that time, we were thinking, oh, wow, I don't even crave the sugar anymore. But then what happens? Eventually, all those cravings come back, and they come back worse. If you do a 30-day no sugar challenge, you are now constantly thinking, I can't have sugar, gotta check all the ingredients. Now I'm watching other people eat all this cake at the birthday party when I can't have any. You're becoming more obsessed with sugar, not less. And then when you finally allow yourself to have it again, there's this huge rebellion and you binge on it and it feels out of control and impossible to stop. So this is the first core reason you're continuing to choose the unhealthy foods and feeling out of control about it. That's the restriction effect in action. This happens psychologically, and it can also happen physically. I know for me, there were times when I went on like all these crazy fad diets, and I would stop eating fruit. And every time I did this, I craved cookies and cake more than I ever had in my life. And my clients share the same thing. When they go low carb, they cannot stop thinking about bread and pastries. So the restriction effect happens on a psychological level, but also a physical level. If you've gone too extreme and now your body is generating these intense cravings because it's begging you to eat what you've depleted it of. So now you see why willpower, it's not your problem in the way that you originally thought. It's not that you don't have enough of it. It's that when you use willpower to deprive yourself or to restrict yourself, you're tricking your body and mind into thinking there's food scarcity. So what will your body and mind do? They will amp up those cravings. They will make them feel uncontrollable, irresistible. Again, if you listen to last week's podcast, you'll go so much deeper into this. But for our purposes today, just know that no willpower is not your personal weakness. This is happening because of basic biology that happens to all of us. Just think about even a bear preparing for hibernation. If the bear knows that food will be scarce in the winter, what will the bear do? She'll eat as much as she can beforehand to prepare. We do the same thing. If you know you're starting a diet tomorrow, what do you do tonight? You'll have one last binge. And after the diet ends, you're going to eat everything in sight. So this is the first reason why we compulsively crave this unhealthy food, because of the restriction effect. Now, the second reason that I'll talk about today why we crave the unhealthy foods is because on some level, and this is likely not a conscious level, we believe these foods solve a problem for us. So maybe that problem is feeling sad or lonely, or we're procrastinating, or we're bored. These foods seem to make these feelings go away. But what's really happening? The eating is just distracting us from our emotions. So just for a second, let me take a little detour into this topic of emotions. Emotions exist in two realms. The first realm is our thoughts. The second realm is in our bodies. So think about that. When you're angry, you might have the angry thoughts, right? Why did she do that? I can't believe it. But where do you feel it? Where do you feel it in your body? Maybe your heart races, or your body gets super hot, or your muscles tense up, right? Same thing when you're sad. Yes, you think the sad thoughts, but also your chest might feel heavy. Your lungs feel like they're collapsing, right? Grief is often felt in the lungs. So we feel these uncomfortable feelings, not just in our thoughts, but in our bodies, and especially these unpleasant emotions or feelings. They're uncomfortable. So we look for ways to escape them. And what does compulsive overeating do? It numbs us. And that numbing feeling, even if we know it's not good, it makes us feel safer. And we know this isn't a real solution. It's a dysfunctional pattern that will give us way more problems than it could ever solve. But in that moment, it does solve the problem of the uncomfortable feeling. And there's this group of people who this becomes a whole lot worse for. I did a couple episodes on this in the past. One of them was actually just a few weeks ago. But people who are very intellectual in nature, or analytical, or type A, right? This group of people, and I'm raising my hand, I am in this group of people. We struggle even more with this dysfunctional numbing pattern because of something that I call the floating head syndrome. We spend a lot of our lives living in our heads, not our bodies. So we've become disconnected from our bodies to begin with. Like when I'm deep in a creative project or I'm writing something, hours can go by before I look up from my screen. And then once I stand up, I realize, oh, wow, I have to pee, or I'm starving, or I haven't had water in 3 hours. Right? My body had these needs the whole time, but I didn't feel them because I was disembodied. I wasn't present in my body. I was a floating head. And if we're floating heads, we don't feel our bodies because we don't live there. So all this to say, most people who I work with have a combination of these couple core reasons that I've mentioned. First, there's the restriction effect that we're unknowingly training our bodies and minds to crave the things that we're telling ourselves not to have. And then on top of that, we're not in our bodies anyway, because we're either numbing our emotions or we're just a floating head who's living from the neck up. So this combination of factors is a recipe for years or even decades of unhealthy eating. Even if you do desire to be healthy, even if you do enjoy the taste of healthy foods, this will still create unhealthy eating patterns. So now the question becomes, how do we overcome these problems? How do we actually transition to eat in a healthy but effortless way and naturally stop craving the unhealthy stuff? But before we get into that, I did want to address one very common question that I always get. And you might be thinking it. You might be thinking, what about processed foods? What about sugar? Aren't they engineered to make us crave more? Isn't that the reason why I can't stop eating them? So here's my answer to that. First of all, I used to think this exact same thing. I used to call myself a sugar addict. I believed I had zero power over sugar, and I believed the only solution for me would be to not have it. I even went to Overeaters Anonymous to try to treat sugar like a drug and just do everything in my power to not touch it. And there were also other processed foods like pizza and things I genuinely felt addicted to because I had this real life experience of promising myself, writing in my journal, declaring it, I will only have this one cookie. And then it would be minutes before it turned into the entire box. And even if I didn't finish them all, I'd still be obsessing over them until they were gone. But here's what I learned. And this isn't just from my own experience. It's also from working with so many people over this past decade who have had sugar addictions and other processed food addictions even longer than I did. What I've found is those same cookies that I used to feel totally powerless around, like let's take Oreos as an example. My relationship with Oreos today is either I don't want them, or even if I do kind of want them, I certainly don't need to eat them all or more than a couple, and I'm totally fine to leave it. Now, this was never the case for me. If I bought Oreos, they'd be gone within the evening. And I've worked with many people who had the same kind of experience. So what's the difference now? The Oreos haven't changed. I've changed. And I've seen this with other people too. One woman, Renee, she joined my Food Freedom Intensive after she had been in Overeaters Anonymous for a couple decades. I think she was in Overeaters Anonymous. So she too was trying to treat food as this drug to abstain from. She thought she had this willpower problem. And meanwhile, Renee was this incredible lawyer, and everybody knows how much willpower and discipline it takes to finish law school and pass the bar exam and build a law practice, right? In theory, this should be much harder than saying no to an Oreo. But for her, it wasn't. She had done every diet, every weight loss program, went to OA for years. So for her, that restriction effect was in full force. So in Renee's first week working with me, she was terrified to eat Oreos because she was afraid she'd lose control. And I told her, I said, just practice using the tools, and I'll get into this in a bit. Just practice using the tools that you learned this first week. So she sat, she breathed, she calmed herself, and she slowly ate that first Oreo. And then she had one bite of the second one. And she said, wow, I don't even want this anymore. It was like disbelief. This had never happened before. And now it's been, oh gosh, I think this month, it's been 5 years since we've worked together. She still remembers this Oreo experience because it was the very first time she ever felt that unique sense of ease with this food that she previously felt hopelessly addicted to. So again, have the Oreos changed? No, she did. And Renee is not the only person who this happened to. Many of my clients had the same experience, and you can hear their stories from their own words on this podcast. So by now, I have seen this enough times that I simply can no longer be convinced that it's just a chemical reaction of the food that's causing us to not be able to stop eating them. It's not the case. Because in all these situations, the food is not what's changing. We're the ones who are changing. And as a side note, on top of all that, I believe there is zero benefit whatsoever to believing that you are powerless against these foods. All that will do is reinforce feelings of helplessness. And that might feel true now. You might feel helpless now. But it doesn't have to be true that you're stuck like this. I've seen it repeatedly. The biggest factors are the restriction effect, where you're forbidding the foods, it makes you want them more, and the floating head syndrome, where you're totally disconnected from your body. But if you just blame the food and say, I need to just keep these foods out of the house, the food is the problem, you're taking away your own power to change. You're saying, I'm a helpless addict, I have no choice, I have no power, which fine, some people don't want to believe that they're capable of healing, and that's fine for them. But that's not who you are. You don't live your life like that. When you take back your power and address the real issues, that's when your freedom becomes possible. So let's talk about the solution now and how you can make that shift that I did, that Renee did, that so many others did, how you can naturally transition to craving the healthy things more and crave the unhealthy stuff less. How do we do that? So it really boils down to 2 transitions that we need to make. These transitions are not a quick fix, but they do work every time. So the first transition is we need to basically reverse the damage that we've done with the restriction effect. So look at how you've approached this in the past with dieting, right? You have this idea of what healthy eating looks like, and then you try to force yourself to follow that. But of course, then we trigger the restriction effect. So if I say to myself, no cookies starting tomorrow, what am I going to want to binge on now? Obviously cookies, it's my last chance. So especially if you've had a long history of dieting and weight loss efforts, and you've lived in this restriction mindset for a long time, what happens is you become wired for scarcity, where all you want is food because you're in a constant state of scarcity. And when that's the case, it will take very little to trigger that restriction effect. So even just saying to yourself, oh, let me just have 1 cookie, that's enough restriction to trigger it. Then you end up eating the whole box. This has happened to me more times than I can count. My nervous system was wired for that, right? Even just saying, I'm going to try not to binge today. Your body and brain will see that as a restriction because you're so wired for scarcity that even something that small will trigger you to do the opposite, and then you'll want to binge. Again, more on this in last week's podcast episode. But the main point now is we need to stop triggering the restriction effect, because us eating all these unhealthy foods uncontrollably is because of our own feelings of food scarcity. Just like that bear going into hibernation. The bear knows there won't be enough food soon, so I got to eat it all now. So if scarcity is wired into our nervous system all the time, that's why we're craving the unhealthy foods all the time. So the first shift is rewiring our nervous systems into a new way of being. And this is the first step of my rewired eating framework, which is what I take all my clients through. So tell me, what is the opposite of scarcity? What's the opposite of scarcity? Abundance. When we feel abundance, true abundance, we're relaxed. Our nervous systems are calm. We're not in a state of wanting. We're in a state of, I have, right? And you know how you say, I wish I could just be normal around food, and you have these people in your life, maybe this one person who doesn't seem to struggle with food at all, and they can just have like a few bites of dessert and they're satisfied somehow? We all know these people. These are people who live in true abundance around food. They don't feel scarcity. They don't think, oh, well, who knows when I'll have the cake again, so I'd better eat it all now. Like, think about it. If we try to explain binge eating to them, and we say, I feel like I can't stop, I have to eat all the food now, even though I'm eating it and I'm feeling all this pain, I still can't stop. They would say, why would you overeat to the point of pain? The cake's not going anywhere. Why would you force yourself to eat all this now? Just stop when it doesn't feel good, right? It's obvious to them because that's the energy of abundance. There's no rush. There's no urgency. There's just peace and ease. And I already hear you thinking, yeah, but if I tell myself to eat in abundance, then I'm just going to eat everything. I'm never going to stop eating. No, that's the scarcity talking. The only reason you want to eat everything is because of the chronic scarcity you've been feeling for years. People who have never experienced that scarcity, who always had this abundance around food, who never put themselves on diets, they're not wired to overeat because they know at their core, in their nervous systems, the food is not going anywhere. They feel safe. So if you want to genuinely eat healthy and want to eat healthy and eat amounts that feel good for you naturally, this is the first shift that needs to happen. Remember, compulsiveness around food comes from scarcity. Peace and ease around food comes from abundance. And to your nervous system, the feelings of scarcity and compulsiveness are the same feeling. And abundance and peace are the same feeling as each other too. And this is what a lot of people miss. Pay attention to this. Many people don't realize that scarcity and abundance, it's more than just a mindset. It's more than just repeating a mantra to yourself. It's the actual state of your nervous system. So think about it. If today you told yourself, hey, I live in abundance. I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, however much I want, right? That might help a little. Or you'll feel even more out of control because your nervous system doesn't believe that yet. Maybe your mind is saying it, but your nervous system hasn't caught up. It's still wired for scarcity. But if your nervous system is calm and your body's relaxed and your breathing is slow, and you feel at peace, that's more the energy of abundance. Hey, I can have whatever I want. There's no rush. There's no urgency. So I can just listen to my body and do what feels good, right? This is more the energy of abundance that normal eaters naturally have. And this is a very important key. And I start training my clients in this on their very first day. And we repeat it every day. In other episodes, you might hear them talk about, slowing down the train, right? Like Grace from a couple episodes ago. She struggled with compulsive overeating for 61 years. On her very first day of doing this work, she focused on shifting from the compulsive to calm, scarcity to abundance. And it was the first time since 1979 that she didn't finish the chocolate bar that she always finished. She left 2 squares. She put them in the fridge. She said to her husband, Dave, oh my God, I didn't need to finish the whole bar, right? They were celebrating. It was really exciting. But it only gets better from there because that's just the beginning. And Grace shares that how slowing down and shifting her nervous system was so powerful for her because then she was able to create more of this baseline of calm, this baseline of abundance. Because when you feel this genuine calm and abundance, this non-urgency around food, the less compulsive you are. And then, of course, the less you're craving the unhealthy food. So that's the first transition you need to make. Now, the next shift I'll talk about is regarding the transition from that floating head syndrome, where you're not feeling your body, you're not feeling fullness, you're not feeling hunger, you're not feeling emotions. Go from that to being able to feel. You start receiving your body signals again, and you're receiving them from that very calm place. You're actually in your body, not just a floating head, feeling what's going on. And think about it. When you've been on diets or weight loss programs or you're sticking to certain food rules, you're basically given a structure to follow, and then you just force yourself, stick to that structure. So if it says, eat 4 ounces of this, what do? You measure out the 4 ounces. And a lot of us, we like this approach because it appeals to our analytical minds. We feel very structured and in control doing something like that, which our type A personalities love. But with something like eating, where you're not just a floating head, but you also have a body, this becomes very problematic. Why? Because you're relying on the part of you that's not actually doing the eating or the digesting. Your head is not involved with this, right? With the exception of your mouth, right? The rest of your body is right here in all its wisdom, but you're not paying attention to it at all. You're following food rules that are on your spreadsheet or in your app, yet the actual body is the part of you that's most accurately going to tell you what the right amount of food is and what foods feel best, right? Because you could look at your plate and your brain will tell you, this is the right portion. This is the right number of ounces. But until that food is physically in your body, you cannot know truly if that's the right amount of food for that moment. So we rely on diets, we rely on food rules because we don't have a connection with our bodies. But the problem is these diets, they don't work. They don't last. If they worked, 1 out of the 50 that we've tried would have worked by now. So if you want to start craving the healthy foods naturally, eating healthier and not even desiring the junk as much, you need to be more connected with your body. And you might be wondering, okay, well, why would me being in my body make me want to eat healthier and actually crave the healthy foods? I'll explain. So it's not your body that is craving the donut. The mind is craving the donut. Body is never the problem. In fact, it's not even really about the taste even, because the truth is, a lot of times when we eat, we're not even that present. What are we really craving? What are we really craving when we're obsessing over that donut? It's not what you think. What you're really craving when you're craving that donut is relief from the craving, relief from the mental obsession, relief from constantly thinking about it. It's like how scratching an itch feels so satisfying. It's not that we just love scratching. What we're really craving and enjoying is the temporary relief from that itch. You get it? With food cravings, we think we want that specific food. We think it's about that food. But what we're actually seeking is relief, peace from the mental obsession. We're seeking relief from the itch, even if for just a moment. And that's why as soon as you have that donut, for a brief second, it feels like, ah. But if we were truly satisfied, we'd stop there. That would be enough. But that's not the case, is it? So we have that one donut, and then we have another donut, and then we're debating, should I have a third donut, right? We're still obsessing, right? Meanwhile, where is the body in this conversation? We're not connected to the body at all. If anything, we're overriding its signals, ignoring its signals. But once you're no longer in scarcity and you can calmly feel your body's signals, you're now more than just the craving, right? You're more than just the moment on your taste buds. You're in your body now. And when you live in your body and not just in your head, you will be naturally drawn to the genuine pleasure of eating the foods that are most natural and healthy to you as a human being, like fruits and vegetables. The more you become attuned to your body and the compulsion is no longer running the show, the more you'll find yourself genuinely wanting the foods that make your body feel good. So that's how it all unfolds naturally. And that's the beautiful uniqueness of this process as we make these two transitions from compulsive to calm, right? Or scarcity to abundance. And then from floating head to actually being in our bodies, we naturally come to crave the foods that feel the best. And then we're less drawn to the things that don't. And this process happens organically, naturally. In my Food Freedom Intensive, this process that I just described, it takes about 2 months, which in the grand scheme of things is pretty short, but it does take the practice. The whole first month, we focus on shifting from compulsive to calm and scarcity to abundance. The second month, once you have that calm, and it's no longer the compulsion driving the show, we can now focus on receiving the body's signals. That's when we start to crave the healthier foods. And it's amazing. And the beauty of this is we don't need any real special skills except repeating it. Because the more we feel the genuine pleasure of it, the more we want to do it. And even with something like Oreos, let's go back to the Oreos. Nobody's going to argue that Oreos are a health food. But even if we have an Oreo, once we've made these shifts, we're not going to eat them in a way that actually feels bad, right? Of course, it feels awful when we eat a whole sleeve of Oreos in 5 minutes, but it might not feel bad to just have an Oreo after dinner, right? Those couple bites, they're not going to harm you. It won't trigger more and more cravings like it used to. So ultimately, what we want is more connection with the body, because then you're naturally going to desire eating the foods that feel good for your body, and you'll feel less attracted to the things that make you feel bad. But if you just keep trying to rely on food rules and sticking to willpower and motivation, it's always going to be a struggle. You could stay stuck like that for years. You could stay stuck like that for your whole life because it's just a loop. But even if you've struggled for 10 years, 20 years, 45 years, and I see this with my clients all the time, you can still make these shifts. You having struggled for a long time does not decrease your ability to have food become a true non-issue for you. You can still become that normal, peaceful eater. You're not stuck like this. And if you want the help and you want the structure to do that, I'll take a few moments now to talk about the Food Freedom Intensive. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, I recently opened up registration. We're starting with our new group on April 6th, where I'll train you in all of this personally. So the Food Freedom Intensive is 4 months long. In the first month, we'll work on what we talked about here today, going from compulsive to calm, scarcity to abundance, and you'll start to feel changes in your first day. More significant shifts start to come by the end of the first week, like forgetting a certain food is in the house that used to always call to you, or eating a few bites of something and then just putting it away with ease. Over the course of that month, all that mental chatter in your mind about food will start to go away during this time, where you'll no longer feel called to those forbidden foods in the same way. Then in the second month, you'll start tuning into your body more. And for those of you with the floating head syndrome, like how I have, this is amazing for you, because now you'll have a superpower, because you'll still have that really strong mind and that capacity to think and analyze. But now also you'll have the ability to be in your body and actually feel what feels good, which means you won't have to rely on a diet ever again. Your body will tell you what feels good in that moment, and you'll start to crave the healthier stuff. And in the third month, you'll be refining these skills of giving yourself what you truly need, what truly feels good. Now that you know how to listen to your body, you'll work on becoming a really good team with it. And then the final month, month number 4, we'll work on ingraining all of this into all the different scenarios of your day-to-day life. So this is just who you are, right? No wagon to fall off of. It just becomes your natural way of being. And many of my clients say at this point, they couldn't even binge the way they used to, even if they tried. They just can't physically do it. And they don't want to do it because now they've become more and more that quote unquote normal eater that we always think about and admire. Now, a couple things about this program. So first of all, this is meant to be integrated into your life, not that you have to rearrange your whole life for this. I know you've done a lot of diets where you had to overhaul everything, and then it becomes a problem when you take a vacation or you go through some kind of life change. This isn't like that. I designed the whole thing so you're applying everything to real life food scenarios as you go through your normal life. And I'm there with you to help the whole time. Number 2, you don't have to worry about trial and error. So you know how in a workout or a yoga class, you'll be doing an exercise or a posture, and then the teacher or the coach will come over and they'll make like this teeny, like seemingly insignificant adjustment, but then the whole posture, the whole exercise feels so different, so much easier. This is what I do for you as you go. As you go through the process, you and I will be connected the whole time, and I'll be giving you these tweaks where you won't have to worry about figuring anything out yourself. All of this will be very smooth. You just have to show up, and I give you the tweaks as you go. And that's why I keep these groups small, because I do keep every person at the forefront of my attention for the full 4 months. So if you're really committed to making this change in your life, my clients tell me this is the best investment they've ever made in themselves. Because when food is truly a non-issue and it's no longer consuming your thoughts, your whole life is open now. And it would be my honor to help make this possible for you too. So again, the next group starts April 6th. You can go to katiepapo.com/programs to learn more. I'll put that in the show notes for you. And also please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. I hope you found this episode helpful, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you for spending time with me today. If you're ready to take the next step in your journey, become a food freedom insider at katiepapo.com/resources. You'll get free practical guidance and instant access to my foundations class. That's katiepapo.com/resources. New podcast episodes come out every week, so subscribe to the podcast now. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a kind review. It's very meaningful to me, and it helps other people find freedom too. I appreciate you so much, and I hope to help you further on your journey. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and others. See you next week.